Ryan here with LongRangeOnly.com. In this video, we're going to talk about Borden rifle actions. So I'm going to do what I typically do when we talk about any component of a rifle, and more specifically actions. But we are going to discuss a little bit of history, and I can assure you I don't have all the pieces, because I don't know that you can unless you were in the bench rest crowd way back when, as Jim was competing in bench rest and eventually came to build his own actions. I've been saying for a couple decades now, and I used to get ridiculed for it, when it comes to long range hunting or any kind of hunting where you desire or demand the ultimate precision out of a rifle, almost all of the things when it comes to components can carry over in some way, shape, or form to what we're trying to accomplish with long-range hunting rifles. There were very few custom actions available that could be used for hunting rifles, and there actually weren't a lot of custom actions when I started getting into long-range hunting. You would typically build off of a Remington 700. Some guys would do Savages. I've had several Savages and several Remington 700s. But like I just said, I've been saying this for a couple decades now, that if we really wanted to do these animals justice, we should practice a little bit more on our precision. And that starts with the components that we were using. And like I said, back then there weren't very many. Most of the things that we care about, or people care about in bench rest disciplines, whether it be actual bench rest or F-class, the action is the heart and soul of the system. Obviously, it's not going to be able to shoot well without a high quality barrel, but the action itself is where it all starts. And Jim has been doing this for as long as I am aware of. When it comes to other custom actions, he's been in the game. Now, there's been, I think the Stoley's been around maybe a little bit longer. This isn't supposed to be a history lesson. I guarantee someone will call me out on it for not having my facts straight. But the point is, Jim has been working on perfecting the Remington 700 clone for a long time. And I have been saying for a long time that it matters when it comes to long-range hunting and the precision that we should be demanding of our rifles. So, like I said, Jim has been working on this. He probably will never be satisfied with what he's putting out from a it can be better standpoint, but we have a very, very good product. Like I said, when it comes to using the things that the bench rest guys are doing in long range hunting, the ones that are winning right now in bench rest F-class are your Bats, your Bordens, and some Kelbleys. Now, there may be some others winning here and there, but a majority of them are going to come from those three manufacturers. And Jim's actions are doing extremely well. And that's not by accident. It is by him putting in the time and actually testing and having his customers test and provide feedback. And I absolutely think it matters in the hunting community. Now, we're going to probably put that aside. I've talked enough about it, and talk about the action itself. Now, there's not, from an end user standpoint in the hunting crowd, there's not a lot of things that you're going to see that are drastically different from other options. But I will tell you where some key things are different, or at least some things that Jim has pioneered along the way. So this is the Ridgeline, so it's their medium length action, the action that I would use for like your 6.5 PRC, your WSMs, your short action Ultra Mags, your Psalms. Those type of cartridges. He also makes them in short and long. He has a very good breakdown on the website of which action you would use for what build you're trying to get completed, and it'll help with that. He's also probably very helpful on the phone, although I think the website gives you enough information to just figure it out and place your order. So it does have a side bolt release, which is pretty much the standard on a custom action nowadays. This is a round action. It's got the bigger screws for the scope rail or the scope mounts. The recoil lug is not integral. I'm going to talk about some advantages to that here in a few seconds. It does have a trigger hanger, which is my preferred method of mounting a trigger on these actions. It's a lot easier to get one out and put a new one in if you have one go down on you. It's a lot easier to carry one to like a PRS event, or even in your hunting gear, have an extra trigger and you can replace the trigger in seconds with a couple Allen screws. It is optional to have it black nitrided. I recommend that. It makes it, in every case of the actions I've used with black nitride, it's smoother than the counterparts. So when you're talking about the action itself being different from other actions, there's not a lot to talk about. What we have to talk about is the things that Jim has discovered from his use as well as his clients' use over the years, and the things that I think that matter. I'm a big proponent of having integral rail for the Picatinny rail and integral recoil lugs, but there are advantages of doing a cylindrical action and then just mounting your Picatinny rail and your recoil lug on separately. Whenever you can take some round bar stock to make the action, it's going to end up straighter than if you take a big old block and cut it down and introduce all kinds of stresses in it. Can most hunting actions actually see the difference? I don't know. You probably can see it in something like a 6 PPC where the groups are agging really small. But in any case, the fact remains that anytime you can do less machining on the action and even the barrel, you're going to end up with a more consistent and straight end result. So there is an advantage to having it round, not having an integral recoil lug, and not having an integral Picatinny rail. So that is a consideration, and the hunting actions that Jim makes are all going to be round actions. Okay, take the bolt out here. This bolt is very similar looking to a Remington 700. It does have a single plunger, and it's using a Socko style extractor. They've worked very well in the past. Like I said, it is black nitrided. Jim's actions have what people have come to call Borden bumps. So as the trigger pushes up on the back of the bolt and you close the bolt into battery, there's a little less tolerance at the top, which helps counteract the trigger pushing up on the bolt and keeping it in line with the bore of the rifle barrel. I think when you talk about actions, this one versus others, the things that an end user is going to feel, that's pretty much it. Again, every time I talk about actions, it seems like there's new action maker popping up every week, and I haven't touched them all. I would say I've touched a majority of the ones, especially the more popular ones that you see people using. Some of them just at SHOT Show. Now the really popular ones, I've shot almost all of them, and I've shot hundreds and sometimes thousands of rounds through them, and that's when you really get to see the difference or feel the difference. It's really hard to explain, but Jim's actions are a lot less prone to binding as you side load the bolt. So if you're running the bolt fairly fast, you're not going to have it want to bind on you as much as some of the other actions. Now Jim did send me 2 bolts, one that had a little bit of cock on close. I'm not going to get on into that topic right here in this video, but we have another video describing it as it pertains to my point of view. I don't like having cock on close. I do understand the desire for people like 6 PPC shooters to have a better balance between cock on close and cock on open to get a rifle that'll set in the bags a little bit better. But from a hunting standpoint, the only thing I really care about is having a smooth bolt close, because when we're off of a bipod, you can always get enough torque with your thumb and your finger to open it smoothly. or at least on a action that's, in my opinion, designed correctly. You're not going to have a problem with that on this action. And it has very, very little cock and close, which I really like. Okay, so we talked about the generalities of this particular action. Compared to other actions, the end user, the only thing you're really going to see is how smooth it is versus some other actions out there. And it's not a ridiculous difference, but it is noticeable after you use it for hundreds of rounds and you compare other actions side by side. The thing that makes this action better than some others, I would argue maybe better than all of the others, is the time and the years that Jim has put into perfecting the ignition system. So everyone talks about blueprinting rifles and getting the threads straight, getting the raceways straight, making sure the face of the action is flat, making sure the lug surfaces are mated perfectly to the lug abutments. Everyone talks about that, and that's great. I do believe for what we're paying for these actions, you should get that. But the ignition system is probably actually a little bit more important, and it's really the consistency, that it's doing the same thing every time. And I'm not saying that other actions don't do that well, but I believe that Jim has probably put a lot more time and effort into making sure that is correct. And I think that's what sets this apart from other actions. And I think when you go out and look at who's winning in the bench rest competitions, and when I say bench rest, I mean F-class and bench rest, all of the games where precision and or score is paramount to winning the event. So that's what you're gonna see the biggest difference in this versus some other actions. Will a hunting action or a hunting rifle be able to notice the difference from field positions? I don't know statistically that you will, but just the fact that it is happening and you can see that in competition guns is something I think is worth having on your hunting rifle. And like I said, I've been saying that for a couple decades. You might as well stack all the odds in your favor when it comes to putting your first round impact where you want it. We don't get sighters in the hunting community, and the first bullet has to go where we want it. And the action is probably the most important part of that. Obviously, the barrel does play a role as well. So I'm not sure there's a whole lot more to talk about. I'll just walk through this particular setup. Like I said, this is a Ridgeline. It's the medium action. It is black nitrided. It's got a side bolt release. I'm using a Hawkins Hunter DBM, which is probably the best thing to use. There are not a lot of options out there for medium actions on bottom metals, and this is an awesome bottom metal. It does not have an integral recoil lug. I don't see that being a problem, especially when you're not going to be swapping barrels a lot. I know a lot of guys like to build switch barrel rifles, but then the initial barrel shoots so well they don't want to swap barrels. So I think it's overrated to have a switch barrel rifle. It does not have an integral rail, Picatinny rail, which we've already talked about the advantages of that. Just get it mounted correctly and you shouldn't have any problems with it. We're not going to talk about how I do that in this video, but it is something that can be done. It does have some shallow fluting on the bolt. Like I said, black nitrided. It does have a trigger hanger and it's extremely smooth. And this rifle shoots extremely well. I don't think there's a whole lot more to talk about. If you want to get more into the ignition system part of this, Jim just did a video with Eric Cortina. You should go check that out. Jim breaks down some of the mechanics of the ignition system and kind of give you an idea. Realistically, to most end users, I think to most end users, the key takeaway would be the actual proof on paper, and that's with people winning in competitions. So I'll have a link down below to a thread on the forum. You can go over there and you can ask me any questions. I'd be more than happy to help you out with those if I can answer them. Maybe I missed something that you want to know more specifically about. Please like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd appreciate it. If you're not a member on longrangeonly.com, it's quick, it's free, it's easy to sign up for. We'd love to have you. There's a lot of great information on the site, a lot of great knowledgeable forum members, and they'd be happy to help you with things outside of this video. So like I said, go ahead and sign up over there. We appreciate you taking the time to watch. Have a great day.